Join me today as we pay our respects at our nation's most sacred shrine, Arlington National Cemetery. It is the final resting place of over 400,000 of America's military personnel and families, a number of Supreme Court justices, and 2 presidents. It is a must-see for student tours, and in this series I will show you the cemetery through this lens as we see what they see when I guide them. We will visit the graves of President John F. Kennedy and his brothers, see the changing of the guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier, spend time at the Memorial Amphitheater, investigate individual graves, and walk through its grounds. It is a magical space where even the most quiet of my student groups become filled with curiosity and questions, and I will share what I know with you as well as give a behind-the-scenes view of the trips. Take a look at the black sign on the way in, the one that says, "Conduct yourself with quiet dignity and respect at all times." Remember, these are hallowed grounds. Now we are up the path from where we were just looking at Arlington House, and right in front of us is where the Kennedy area begins. And you can see there is a flag at half mast, so that is where Arlington House is. You really can't see it through the trees back there, but that's where it is. And when I'm with my groups, we gather pretty much right around this area to talk about President Kennedy first. Up there, it's kind of more of a quiet area, so you can't really talk there. And even for shooting this video, I can't talk up there either. So I will talk down here where I talk to my kids. But right there in front of us is where it's kind of my go-to area to bring them, by where that trash can is. And then there's also this area to the left of this pathway. And if we're coming from the other direction, so if we go to the tomb of the unknown soldier first, then we'll come down that other pathway over there, and you can see that there's a tram stop. So I will kind of gather them right at the edge of the tram stop and talk to them. And it's pretty much a general rule, it's a tour guide rule, that you should never talk to your groups right in front of the places you're taking them to. So if you're standing right in front of a memorial and you have a group of 50 people with you, well, that's kind of inconsiderate to all the other people that are there to see that memorial. Now, no one's really going to be able to see it because we're tying up all the space. So we're trained anyway to talk a bit outside of whatever that place is that we're looking at. But here at Kennedy, it's even more important because they have signs posted to stay silent and respectful at his grave. So like I said, even for filming this video right now, I can't even do that. So I will talk out here. But anyway, President John F. Kennedy, he was our president back in the early 60s. So he served from 1961 to 1963, and he was assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald. And he was one of our most loved presidents. He was extremely charismatic. This may have helped him win the election early on. He was young, good-looking, comfortable in front of the camera, and he had a debate with Richard Nixon, who was much older and very uncomfortable in front of the camera. In fact, he was sweating. So this may have helped him win the election. Many people think that he was the youngest president that we ever had, but this is actually not true. The youngest president we ever had was Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt was 42 when he became president, and JFK was 43. So JFK was actually our youngest elected president. Teddy Roosevelt took over the job when President McKinley was assassinated, and then later on he had his own term from his own election when he was older than 43 at that point. So that was the case there. Also, President Kennedy was a World War II hero. He actually earned a Purple Heart. And the reason he is allowed to be buried at Arlington Cemetery is because of this fact. There are strict rules about who can be buried here, and a president is not automatically allowed to be buried here because they're the president. They have to meet the general criteria, and one of the ways you can be allowed to be buried here is by being a recipient of a Purple Heart. So what happened was he was on a ship that got rammed by the Japanese, and the ship got split in two. He and his other crewmates swam for 4 hours to reach this tiny island, and one of the crewmates was unconscious, and he pulled this person by his teeth. So the other person had his life vest on, and basically he just bit down on the strap and swam. Now, because the ship had been rammed in two, there was gasoline everywhere, and JFK swallowed a lot of gasoline during the swim, and it gave him stomach problems for the rest of his life. And this is why he earned the Purple Heart. He was not in office for long, but he did quite a bit while he was. So he was a big supporter of the civil rights movement. He helped get the Civil Rights Act passed, which passed after his death in 1964, which ended segregation. He was a big supporter of the space program. He said that by the end of this decade, we will have a man on the moon. And then that happened in 1969, again after his death. So he was a congressman at first, and then a senator, and later president, and he donated every penny of his salary to charity. He came from a wealthy family. He really didn't need the money, but still he could have easily kept it, but he didn't. He also helped avoid World War III. So there was the Cuban Missile Crisis at that time. The Cold War was at a peak with the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union sent missiles to Cuba, only 90 miles from the Florida coast, and things were extremely tense. That is the closest we have ever been to World War III. And because of President Kennedy, he helped talk down the whole situation with Nikita Khrushchev, the leader of the Soviet Union, and we avoided World War III. President Kennedy also started the Peace Corps. So I will ask my kids if they've ever heard of the Peace Corps, and most of the time they have not heard of it. Then again, they're only 8th graders, but they will. But I tell them what it is. It's a program where you can volunteer in third world countries and to help them meet their basic needs and whatever else they need to help improve their infrastructure. And they may be interested in that program in the future, and that all started because of President Kennedy. Now, he is buried up there with his wife, Jackie, and also 2 small children. So before he was killed, he had 2 children who died. One was stillborn. It was a girl, and they actually had not named her yet. So the grave says daughter. And the other is a boy who died when he was 2 days old. His name was Patrick, and his gravestone does say Patrick. And Jackie wanted his funeral to be modeled after Abraham Lincoln's funeral, which it was. And she also wanted an eternal flame. So there is an eternal flame up there. The kids are always asking me questions about the eternal flame. Like, does it really never go out? What about when it's raining really hard? And the truth is, this eternal flame, and really all eternal flames that are outdoors, they do go out constantly. When there's heavy rain, when there's wind, they do go out. But the thing is, they have a mechanism that keeps trying to ignite it over and over again. So as soon as it goes out, it gets relit again. So that's kind of how these eternal flames work. Now, right after his assassination, many people thought that he would be buried with other family members in Brookline, Massachusetts, which is where the family is from. But Jackie made the decision to have him buried here. And that is because earlier that year, JFK stood right there by Arlington House, and there's this beautiful view up there. And he said, "I could stay here forever." He loved it that much. And it kind of gives you goosebumps when you hear that now, knowing what happened later. But Jackie remembered that, and that's really what sparked her decision to have him buried here. And there's only one other president buried at Arlington, and that is President Taft, who is kind of down in that direction. And if there is enough time, again, like I said earlier, what we actually do in the cemetery depends on our timing. But if there is enough time, we will also visit the Kennedy brothers' graves, which are very close. So basically, we will walk this way where the others are and continue down that way. And then there's a pathway we take where we turn left and head down to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, if we hadn't already done that first. Otherwise, we could do the same thing in reverse. Today, since I actually have all day and I'm not with a group, we will go that route. We will visit the Kennedy brothers' graves and walk in that direction, which is really scenic. It's a pretty awesome way to go. So we are gonna do exactly that. But right now, let's go ahead up to President Kennedy's grave and take a look.